Chapter 8. Did he see us? Morgan took the drawing from Eli and inspected it. The fissure was definitely closer. And more than that, one arm was extended out, reaching for them. Oh no, he did see us. She kept expecting snow and wind to erupt from the page at any moment. Her hands were shaking. From the cold, from the shock of it all, from the thought of some animal being sprinting at them. Sprinting at them. She handed the drawing back to Eli, too freaked out to hold it any longer. It was like a scene from a horror movie. Eli's hands were not shaking at all. "Aren't you scared?" she said. He was looking at the drawing and not at Morgan. He ran his fingers over the surface. "It's still cold." "Eli!" Morgan snapped her fingers to get his attention. "Huh? I was asking if you were scared. Why aren't you scared? This is a little bit crazy, isn't it?" "It reminds me of home." "Your home is like Hoth?" "Hoth? Are you serious? Rebel Alliance, Secret Base, Star Wars?" Eli shook his head. "Well, if that reminds you of home," she said, pointing to the drawing from a safe distance, "trust me, your home is like Hoth." She picked up her phone and used it to guide them out of the room. "And that thing is the abominable snowman creature, and it captured Luke." "That's not a thing," Eli said. "It's a fissure. In Cree, the word for fissure is ochek." Morgan turned on her heels so fast that her hair whipped her cheeks. "Yeah? And what's the word for, did you not just see a portal open to another world and that ochek running at us like it wanted to kill us?" Her feet were wet from the floor. From the floor, she took off her socks and wrung them out. Eli said, "There's no word for that in Cree." "Oh," Morgan said, "it's sarcasm." She took one step down the first flight of stairs, but he put a hand on her shoulder. She stopped. "What?" she said. "Well, aren't you curious?" "I'm too freaked out to be curious, Eli. We saw a picture come to life, and it's freaking me out. And it's freaking me out that you're not freaked out." She kept walking down the stairs. "But wouldn't you want to go through the picture? If you could?" This time, she stopped on her own. "You mean if there wasn't some kind of weird human animal running at us, would I want to go through a picture into another world?" "Well, doesn't that happen in your books?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "It happens in my fiction books." She leaned in close to him to drive home her point. "Did you consider that he might have been mad? I mean, we were like humans coming onto his land?" "Well, kind of like in real life too," he said. Whatever. Morgan ran up the stairs and snatched the picture from his hands. "We should burn it. Make sure that thing doesn't, crawl out and try to get us in our sleep." Eli, in turn, grabbed it from her. "We aren't burning it." He gripped the picture with both hands, in case she tried to take it again. He wouldn't look away from it, and when she shone her flashlight on him, she could see that he didn't look curious anymore, but sad. It reminded him of home, and he wasn't anywhere near home. He was here, in an attic, in this house, in the middle of some middle-class neighborhood in a city. It wasn't long ago that he'd been in his own community. She sat down on the top step. "I don't remember my home," she said. "I wouldn't even call it home." She wrapped her arms around her body. Now that the shock of what they had seen and heard had begun to wear off, she noticed that her shirt was wet and she was cold. "It's not the blizzard that's like home," Eli said, "or the ochek." He sat beside her. She looked at him and he smiled. She smiled back. "It's the open space. All the room. There was this field behind my house that was forever long, and I could just play in it all day. Even when I was lost, I wasn't really lost." Morgan put her arm around Eli. She didn't try to take the picture again. She even looked at it, tried to see what he saw, remember what he remembered. "Okay," she said, "we won't burn it, but can we leave it up here in the room? Nothing will happen to it." "Promise?" he asked. "You won't come back here and throw it out later?" "Promise," she said, And if the fisher tries to crawl out of the picture, can I remind you how crazy this all sounds? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. It won't, he said. How do you know? Well, because we did something. I don't think that portal will open unless we do the same things again. Like staple it to a wall? Maybe. Morgan put her hand on her face and shook her head. We must be sleeping. She pinched her thigh and then her arm several times. Her skin was numb as it was cold, but she could feel the pinches. She didn't wake up in bed, her ear pressed against the pillow. She remained on the steps sitting beside Eli, both of them staring at a picture that had come alive. We just opened a portal to another world, she said. We should go there. We should... What? Are you crazy? Morgan did snatch the drawing this time, but not to burn it. She walked into the attic, tossed it into the room, and slammed the door. Eli said maybe the Ochek needed us. Maybe it wasn't running after us to kill us or anything. It was stuck in the blizzard, right? Well, it wasn't stuck in the blizzard. There was a village behind it, remember? You drew the picture. What if we're supposed to go to the other side? He asked. You said it yourself. It's a portal to another world. Why would it open now? Why would it open with us right here? We can't ignore that. Yes, we can, she said. We'll seal this back up and pretend like we never found it. I like my fantasy worlds in books. But I don't want to pretend that we never found it. You just want to pretend it's your home because you don't have one anymore. The attic fell deathly silent. Through the door to their secret room, Morgan could hear drops of water land on the plywood, snow left over from the blizzard, melting. Eli, she whispered, I am so sorry. Of all the things she had done today, this was by far the worst. I was just scared. Instead of answering, instead of looking up at Morgan, Eli just got up and left with his head down. He heard his steps on the stairs to the second floor. Morgan waited a moment longer and followed behind him. By the time she walked into the hallway, he had already shut the door to his bedroom. Morgan went to her room. She shut the door, took off her damp clothing, and found a pair of sweats and a ratty old t-shirt and collapsed on her bed. She lay on her stomach with her face pushed hard into the pillow, crying until it was as damp as the clothing she had taken off. Morgan? It was Katie. How much time had passed? Minutes? An hour? Morgan hadn't been thinking about the portal or the fisher, just about Eli and what she had said to him. How could she have said that, like she'd never gone through what he was going through right now? She was scared, like she'd told him. Scared, and the more she thought of it, jealous. That he remembered his home, and she didn't. She'd never thought she'd wanted to. Morgan didn't say anything, but felt Katie sit down at the foot of her bed. She looked up to see that Katie was holding the shoebox, and the first thing Katie did was put it on the ground and slide it across the carpet until it was flush against the wall. Have the moccasins been repurposed as a peace offering? Morgan asked, staring at a window at the streetlight. Because if we're being all indigenous, I think I've learned something about smoking a pipe for that. It got quiet. So quiet Morgan could hear Eli's pencil scraping. I don't know why I say things like that, Morgan whispered. Well, Katie shifted her body to face Morgan. Morgan could see the movements out of the corner of her eye. I Googled Manitoba mukluks. There are people who try to profit from indigenous culture, like gift shops in small towns that sell dream catchers or something and you hang them in your mirror, stuff like that. Those people have bad intentions. Morgan turned towards Katie and she said, but Manitoba Mukluks, it's a company owned and operated by indigenous people. And it doesn't mean you have to wear them, Morgan. Katie leaned forward and rubbed her palms against her knees. Were her palms sweating? I don't think I'm saving you by fostering you, You're a strong young woman. You don't need saving. James and I, we want to make sure you're not... And she rubbed her face. I'm just not one of those good-intentioned settlers, okay? Morgan turned on her back and propped herself up on a pillow. At the school where I teach, there isn't a lot of diversity. The neighborhood's a lot like this one, so, well, you get what I'm saying. In my grade 5 class, there was this one girl. Beautiful. She's Indigenous. And she looks sad all the time and scared. One day, halfway through the year, I guess after she started to trust me, she told me what she'd gone through. She was in care. Katie shook her head and wiped out her cheek. A tear had fallen. Care. What'd she say? Morgan asked. Katie shook her head again, like Morgan shouldn't know or Katie couldn't say. Anyway, if I could just show a kid love, maybe I could give a kid a good home. So somehow you'd be helping that girl? Maybe, she nodded. Or maybe I'd be helping you. Morgan looked Katie over in the quiet that followed. She couldn't have been really older than 30. Her light brown hair was tied back into a ponytail. She was wearing gray yoga pants and a black cardigan that she hugged around her body. Her glasses were sliding toward the tip of her nose. The moccasins, said Katie, the bannock. She chuckled softly, admonishing herself, Morgan imagined. I thought I should try to connect with you, with your culture, that it would make things better. Morgan sat up and leaned forward. Those moccasins would have been perfect for Eli, He's got himself figured out. He's Indigenous. Probably goes to ceremonies and all that. I don't think I even want to be Indigenous. I grew up white, in white homes. I'm not Indigenous anymore. Katie spoke carefully and quietly. Does doing all that make him more Indigenous than you? Morgan shrugged. She didn't know, and she didn't know what to say. Tell me what I can do, said Katie. That's part of how I can learn if you just, how about you just treat me like I'm just an ordinary girl? I don't need to wear those, she pointed at the gift, or hang dream catchers from my window or smudge every morning or whatever else. Just treat me like a girl. Katie shuffled off the bed closer to Morgan. Close, but not too close. She put her hand on Morgan's foot. I like you, Morgan. James and I both do, and we don't want to lose you. Even if I act crazy? Morgan asked, trying to keep the tears down in her stomach. She had cried enough today. Katie smiled reassuringly. Nothing you could do would make us want you gone, Morgan. And speaking of humans, of being a girl or a teen, sometimes they do that. I was a girl once, believe it or not. I did way worse than slam my palm on a table or make someone's breakfast into a mad face. It was just the whole day, Morgan thought, of every little thing she'd done that she wished she hadn't. Katie didn't say anything. She sat there a moment, tapped Morgan on the foot a couple times, and got up from the bed. I won't run away, Morgan blurted out. Then I'll see you in the morning, said Katie. No faces on your breakfast plate, no moccasins, and no bannock. Actually, said Morgan, I kind of like bannock, with lots of butter and a bit of jam. Katie laughed a bit and shut the door. Morgan turned on her side and stared out the window, and stayed like that until the house was dark and quiet. No movement, no snoring. She wanted to go see Eli and apologize. Tell him, okay, if the portal works again, if it wasn't some crazy mind meld hallucination they had simultaneously had, well, then they'd go check it out. Go through it, just a few steps, but only if the fisher wasn't there. And if it was running at them again, no way. But it had been a long day, and in thinking about all of this, she fell asleep.